I never thought I'd find myself in such a painful situation, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. My name is Jake, and I want to share my experience, one that has put me through an emotional roller coaster I never signed up for. I'm here, not just to vent, but also to reflect on what I've learned. My wife, Sarah, and I had been married for 8 years. We often described ourselves as a perfect match, two peas in a pod. I was an accountant, focused on my career but always made time for family. Sarah, a stay-at-home mom, was creative and had a few side gigs baking and catering. Life was busy, but we made it work, or so I thought. Recently, things seemed off. Little things at first, like her being more secretive with her phone. She'd scroll through it and quickly lock it when I entered the room. I chalked it up to her working on her business, a normal thing, right? She was just trying to keep her recipes and ideas under wraps, I figured. But there was also a change in her attitude. She was snappier, more irritable. When I'd ask about her day, she'd brush me off, saying she was busy planning for an upcoming event. Then came the cooking lessons. I thought it would be a fun way for us to bond over something we both enjoyed. I hired a local celebrity chef, Marco, who had a reputation for being charismatic and engaging. I figured it would be a great experience, but looking back, I see how naive I was. After that first session, Sarah was glowing, practically beaming about Marco. She'd talk about his techniques, his passion for food, and how he was so talented. There was a spark in her eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time, and it felt good to see her excited, but it also raised a few flags in my mind. One evening I came home earlier than usual. I planned to surprise Sarah with dinner, but instead I found her alone in our kitchen, the iPad propped up on the counter. She was typing away furiously, and when I walked in, she quickly slammed it shut. The look on her face told me everything. I shrugged it off as nothing, but inside I felt a nagging sensation. A few days later, while looking for a recipe to make for dinner, I could feel my curiosity peaking. I grabbed the iPad, and as I opened it, my heart sank. There in full view were chat logs between Sarah and Marco. What I found twisted my gut: flirty exchanges, suggestive comments, and even explicit messages that left nothing to the imagination. My mind raced, and anger surged through me like an electric shock. I couldn't believe it. My wife was cheating on me. I felt sick to my stomach, a mix of disbelief and rage. How could she betray me like this? Worse, with the very person I had invited into our home, someone I had trusted. I sat there, staring at the screen, barely able to process the betrayal. The next few days were a haze. I went through the motions of life, but every interaction felt surreal. I couldn't look at Sarah without feeling a torrent of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion. I watched as she went about her day, blissfully unaware that I held the key to her lie. I needed to confront her, but how? The night I finally decided to confront her, my heart raced. I couldn't allow myself to get distracted by the sweet facade she put on. I sat her down, the iPad between us, and with trembling hands I slid it toward her. Her face turned pale, and I saw panic wash over her. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but I could feel the tremors of betrayal in my heart. "What's this about?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Your cooking lessons with Marco," I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. Her eyes darted away from mine, and I could see the gears turning in her head, searching for an excuse. "Jake, it's not what you think. He's just a chef, and we're only talking about food." But I wasn't buying it. I laid out the entire situation: the messages, the flirtation, and her every excuse felt like nails on a chalkboard. "Just food," I pressed. "You expect me to believe that? It's clear there's something more between you two." She looked me dead in the eyes, her expression shifting from feigned innocence to a mix of defensiveness and frustration. "You're being ridiculous, Jake. You're overreacting. Marco is he's charismatic, that's all." I felt my anger boil as I fought to control my emotions. Charismatic enough to have an affair with my wife. As we continued to argue, I could see her facade cracking. The lies began to unravel, and she finally admitted to the emotional connection, but insisted it was nothing physical. A part of me wanted to believe her, but the evidence was right in front of me. I felt like my world was crumbling, and all I could do was sit there, drowning in the pain of her betrayal. The emotional impact of that confrontation hit me hard. I went from shock to anger to profound sadness in a matter of minutes. I felt like I was losing the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew. The trust that had taken years to build was shattered, and I was left picking up the pieces of my broken heart. I didn't know what to do next. I had to consider my options. Could we work through this, or was it time to cut my losses and walk away? The thought of losing Sarah was unbearable, yet the thought of staying with someone who had betrayed me so deeply felt like a death sentence. The uncertainty weighed heavily on my shoulders. In the days that followed, I wrestled with my emotions. I knew I had to make a decision, but how could I move forward when trust had been obliterated? I sat alone one night, reflecting on everything that had happened. It was a chaotic mix of anger and sadness, and I felt utterly lost. What was I going to do? I realized I needed to regain control of my life to find clarity amidst the chaos. The confrontation hadn't solved anything. It only opened a floodgate of emotions that I had to sift through. I had to make a choice on how to move forward. The days after the confrontation with Sarah were a blur. I found myself navigating through a storm of conflicting feelings: anger, sorrow, disbelief, and even moments of nostalgia for the life I thought I had. With every passing hour, the weight of betrayal pressed heavier on my chest, and I was unsure of how to proceed. I decided to take a few days off work to clear my head. I figured the quiet would help me think, but instead I found my thoughts consumed by images from our life together and the reality of her infidelity. I spent a lot of time staring out the window, watching the world go by as if it were a movie I was no longer a part of. In those moments, everything felt surreal. I didn't want to make any rash decisions, but the more I thought, the more I realized that Sarah's betrayal went beyond a simple affair. It crushed my trust in her, and trust is the foundation of any relationship. If she could so easily lie to my face, what else had she hidden? One afternoon, I took a drive to clear my mind. I ended up at a park where we used to spend time together, laughing and sharing dreams for the future. Sitting there, I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak. I thought about how easy it had been for her to connect with Marco, how she had hidden it from me, and how she had the audacity to downplay the emotional affair. That's when it hit me. I needed to gather more information. I felt like a detective in my own life, piecing together evidence for a case. I needed to confront the reality of her actions fully before I decided what to do next. I opened the iPad, the gateway to her deceit, and began searching through the messages again. The more I read, the deeper my anger grew. There were messages where Sarah shared personal thoughts, moments of vulnerability, and even flirtatious banter with Marco. It was as if she had poured her heart into conversations with him that she had never shared with me. At one point, she mentioned feeling alive when they were together, something I had never seen in her eyes during our marriage. The realization stung like a fresh wound. With each passing hour, my initial shock morphed into a burning desire for revenge. I knew that sinking to her level would only degrade me further, but the idea of confronting Marco was tempting. Should I warn him about the havoc he was wreaking in our lives, or should I confront him directly? I wrestled with the idea until I settled on a course of action. I needed to take back some of the control I had lost, and if that meant confronting him, then so be it. I did some research and discovered that Marco frequently hosted cooking classes at a popular culinary school downtown. The next day, I found myself sitting in a parking lot nearby, my heart racing. The plan was simple. I would wait for him to arrive and confront him about the affair. As I sat there, I felt a mix of dread and determination. What would I say? How would he react? Would he be the arrogant chef I imagined, or would he be caught off guard? These questions swirled in my head like a storm. Eventually, I saw his flashy sports car pull into the lot. My pulse quickened and I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. I approached him as he exited his car, the sunlight glinting off his designer sunglasses. He looked like he had just stepped out of a magazine, exuding the confidence of someone who was used to being adored. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I called out to him. "Marco!" I shouted, my voice breaking the calm of the afternoon. He turned, surprise flashing across his face as he recognized me. "Can I help you?" My heart raced, but I pressed on. "I'm Jake." Sarah's husband. His expression shifted from shock to a cocky grin. "Ah, Jake, nice to meet you. We've been having some fun in the kitchen. Sarah's a great student." The casual nature of his response made my blood boil. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to lash out. "Fun, is that what you call it? Because I call it cheating." The grin vanished, replaced by a look of feigned innocence. "What do you mean?" I didn't hold back. I laid out everything, the messages, the flirtation, the emotional affair. His demeanor shifted as he realized the gravity of the situation. He stammered, trying to defend himself, but I wasn't interested in his excuses. "I'm not here to debate," I shot back. "You need to understand the damage you've done. You've taken something sacred and thrown it away for a cheap thrill." He opened his mouth, searching for words, but all I saw was a man caught off guard, his bravado crumbling. Finally, he said, "Look, man, it's not like that. We just had a connection." "A connection?" I spat. "You knew she was married, you took advantage of that." The tension hung thick in the air. I could see the wheels turning in his head, and for a moment I felt a sense of satisfaction watching him squirm. But then another thought hit me. What was I actually gaining from this confrontation? Was it worth it? As I considered this, I saw the glimmer of a realization cross his face. "You're right, I messed up. I didn't mean to hurt you." I took a step back, realizing that it was clear he wasn't truly remorseful. "You should end things with her. It's for the best." "Okay, okay," he mumbled, looking down at his shoes. I turned to leave, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. I had confronted him, but it had barely scratched the surface of my emotional turmoil. It felt good to stand up for myself, but deep down, I knew the real fight was with Sarah. When I returned home, I braced myself for what was next. I couldn't ignore what had just happened, nor could I pretend everything was fine. Sarah was waiting for me, and I knew that the next conversation would determine the future of our marriage. As I walked in, I felt a surge of strength and resolve. I was done being the victim. It was time to take back control of my life, no matter how painful it might be. And that started with confronting Sarah about her betrayal, not just with Marco, but with herself and our life together. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it head on. The aftermath of my confrontation with Marco would lead to an even bigger confrontation with my wife, and I had no idea what to expect, but I was prepared to find out. When I walked through the front door, I could feel the tension in the air thickening like smoke. Sarah was in the living room, her eyes glued to the television, but she didn't seem to be watching it. Instead, her fingers fidgeted with her phone, and the moment I entered, she glanced up, a mixture of concern and apprehension flickering across her face. "Hey, you're back early," she said, attempting to sound casual. But I could hear the tremor in her voice, the way it cracked slightly under the pressure of unspoken words. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I took a deep breath and made my way toward the kitchen where the iPad still sat, a digital testament to her betrayal. I picked it up, feeling its weight in my hands. This device had become an emblem of everything that had gone wrong in our marriage. "Jake, what's wrong?" Sarah's voice trailed after me, laced with a hint of panic. I turned to face her, clutching the iPad tightly. "I just had a conversation with Marco." Her eyes widened and she straightened in her seat, an instant shift from casual to alert. "What? You talked to him?" "Yes, I did. And it's time we had a real conversation about what's been going on between you two," I said, my voice steady yet firm. I could see the color drain from her face as I watched her process the implications of my statement. The defiance that had marked our earlier confrontation melted away, leaving a look of fear. "Jake, please, let's talk about this rationally," she pleaded, her voice losing its previous bravado. "Rationally? You mean you want to downplay your emotional affair and pretend everything is fine?" I shot back, barely able to contain my anger. "How do you expect me to be rational when you've betrayed me like this?" "Betrayed? I didn't mean for things to get out of hand," she exclaimed, her tone rising. "It was just a connection, something I didn't plan for. You have to believe me." "Believe you?" I echoed, incredulous. "You were sending him messages that went way beyond just talking about cooking. You told him you felt alive with him. How am I supposed to believe anything you say?" For a moment, silence hung in the air as she struggled to find the right words. I could see her mind racing, trying to craft a defense, an excuse, anything that could salvage her credibility, but nothing could erase the truth that felt like a weight pressing down on my heart. "I made a mistake, Jake," she finally said, her voice softer, almost pleading. "I never meant to hurt you. It was just so easy to talk to him. He made me feel special. Special." I snapped, the bitterness rolling off my tongue. "You know who else made you feel special? Your husband. It's supposed to be me, not some celebrity chef." She looked down, clearly ashamed. "You've been so busy and I felt lonely. I just wanted someone to pay attention to me." The words cut deep and I felt my heart twist in pain. I had always thought we were a team navigating life together. I was focused on providing for our family, but I had never imagined that in my absence she would seek comfort in someone else's arms. "Lonely? Is that your excuse? You didn't think to talk to me about how you felt. Instead, you jumped into an emotional affair." My voice trembled with disbelief. "I didn't think it would go this far," she protested, tears gathering in her eyes. "It just happened. Just happened." I shook my head, incredulous. "That's not an excuse. You made a choice, Sarah. You chose to betray me, and you chose to share your feelings and your life with him instead of me." She opened her mouth as if to argue, but then closed it again. The weight of my words seemed to settle over her, and for a moment she looked defeated. "Jake, I'm so sorry. Please, let's work through this. I love you," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "You went to someone else when I thought we were supposed to be in this together." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. I could see the hurt in her eyes, but I was still grappling with my own hurt and rage. "I feel like I don't even know who you are anymore," I continued, the pain breaking through the anger. "I'm still me, Jake. I made a mistake, but I want to fix this. I'll do anything," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "Anything," I challenged, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "What does that even mean? You think a few nice words are going to erase the pain you've caused?" "I'll cut ties with him, I swear," she said earnestly. "I'll do whatever it takes to rebuild what we had." "Rebuild?" I echoed softly. "You can't just rebuild trust like it's some DIY project. It's not that simple, Sarah. Please just give me a chance to fix it. I'll show you I can change," she said, desperation spilling from her every word. As I looked at her, I felt a mix of pity and fury. A small part of me wanted to believe her, to hope that maybe we could come back from this. But another part of me, the part that had been hurt and betrayed, screamed that I should walk away entirely. "Can you really come back from this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Can you really change?" "I want to," she said, her eyes pleading with me. "I'll fight for us, for our family. I know I made a mistake, and I regret it every single day." The weight of the moment crashed down on me, and I felt like I was standing at a crossroads. I could either fight for this relationship and try to mend the broken pieces, or choose to walk away and start anew. The thought terrified me. I had never imagined my life without Sarah, but did I really want to spend my days with someone who had betrayed my trust so completely? I took a deep breath, trying to find a sense of clarity amidst the chaos. "I need time," I finally said, my voice steady, but my heart was in turmoil. "I can't make any decisions right now. Please, Jake, don't give up on us," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm not giving up. I'm just trying to figure out what's next for me. I need to process everything." As I turned away, I heard her sob softly behind me, and it tore at my heart. But as I stepped outside into the fresh air, I realized that I had taken a step toward reclaiming my life. I was still deeply wounded, but I wouldn't allow myself to be a victim of her choices. I needed time to think, to heal, and to decide whether rebuilding was even possible. In that moment, I understood that the road ahead would be challenging, filled with uncertainty and heartbreak. However, it was a road I had to navigate alone for now, as I weighed my options and began to heal from the emotional scars Sarah's betrayal had left behind. The following days were a blur of emotions, a whirlwind of confusion, anger, and sadness swirling around me like a storm. I'd taken Sarah's plea for a second chance to heart, but I didn't know if I had the strength to forgive her, or if I even wanted to try. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, peering down into an abyss of uncertainty. I spent hours walking through the park, trying to find clarity. Friends reached out, asking if I was okay, but how could I explain? I felt like a character in a soap opera, living out a plot twist that no one could believe. All I could do was nod and say I was fine, even though I felt anything but. One evening, I decided to visit a bar I used to frequent with friends before everything fell apart. I thought maybe a drink would help clear my head. I sat at the bar, nursing a whiskey, when I overheard a couple talking about their relationship struggles. It was surreal to hear their laughter mixed with the weight of their problems, and I found myself reflecting on my own predicament. How did love become so complicated? As I sipped my drink, I scrolled through social media, trying to distract myself from the turmoil inside. That's when I stumbled upon a post that made my blood run cold. It was a picture of Marco and Sarah together at a cooking class, looking happy and carefree. My stomach dropped as a wave of betrayal washed over me again. How could she pretend that everything was fine while parading around with him? I felt my heart race, and before I could think, I found myself typing a message to her. Just saw a picture of you and Marco. Looks like you're having a great time. I typed, fury bubbling beneath the surface. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with a reply. Jake, please don't. It's not what you think. We're just friends. Friends. The word stung like a bee sting. I could hardly keep my composure. Friends don't flirt and share intimate conversations, Sarah. You know that. The back-and-forth messages escalated quickly. She tried to defend her actions, but the more she wrote, the angrier I became. I hadn't expected her to take accountability. I wanted her to own up to her mistakes, not play the victim. You're still acting like I'm the villain here. You chose to betray me, I said, my fingers typing furiously. I decided I needed to confront her again, this time not just about Marco, but about everything. The way we'd let our relationship deteriorate, the lies and the emotional distance that had crept in. I wasn't ready to throw in the towel yet, but I needed to voice my feelings, all of them. That night I called her and asked to meet at a nearby cafe. We need to talk. It's serious, I urged. When she arrived, her eyes darted around the room, her anxiety palpable. I could tell she was nervous, and part of me felt a flicker of satisfaction. She needed to feel the weight of her actions. Jake, please, I want to make this work, she said as she sat down, her voice shaky. Do you even realize how this looks? I asked, my tone firm. You keep saying you want to fix things, but then I see you flaunting your relationship with Marco online. It's like you're rubbing salt in the wound. She sighed, running her fingers through her hair, a sign of her stress. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I thought I could handle it and still keep things with you. Handle it, I repeated, incredulous. You can't juggle an affair and a marriage. It doesn't work that way. Jake, I know I messed up. I let my emotions take over and I should have come to you instead. I realize that now, she admitted, her voice softening. Do you really mean that? I challenged, searching her eyes for sincerity. I do, I promise, she said, leaning forward, her expression earnest. I want to fix this. I'll end things with Marco, cut all ties. I just want us back. The desperation in her voice tugged at my heart, but I was still filled with doubt. You think it's that easy? You can't just erase the way you made me feel. You broke my trust. I know, and I'm so sorry, she replied, tears starting to well up in her eyes. As we continued to talk, something shifted inside of me. I began to see the cracks in her facade, the vulnerability she was trying to mask with bravado. Maybe it was true that she had made a terrible mistake, but what if we could find a way to rebuild our relationship from this ground zero? But there was still a voice in my mind screaming for caution. Trust wasn't just a switch you could flip back on. It was something that took time to cultivate. I needed to know if she was genuinely committed to making amends or if this was just a temporary response to the uncomfortable situation. Sarah, if we're going to make this work, I need to see real change. This can't be just words. It has to be actions, I said firmly. I understand, Jake. I'll do everything I can. Just give me a chance, she begged, her voice trembling. It was a pivotal moment, and I realized that while I was still hurting, there was a flicker of hope in the air. I didn't want to throw away 8 years of our life together without exhausting every option, but it had to be on my terms. I need you to completely cut ties with Marco, I insisted. No more classes, no more messages, nothing. I can do that, she nodded enthusiastically, a look of determination crossing her face. Good, I said, feeling a sense of control returning to me. And I need time to think. This won't happen overnight. I understand, she said softly. As we left the cafe, I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. I wanted to believe that we could work through this, but the road ahead would be long and rocky. I had opened the door to the possibility of reconciliation, but I was acutely aware that it would take time and effort from both of us. As I drove home that night, I felt the weight of uncertainty lift slightly. Maybe we could rebuild, but I knew I had to keep my guard up. This was just the beginning of a long journey, and I wasn't ready to abandon my hopes just yet. However, I was also prepared to face the possibility that, despite my efforts, my heart might lead me down a different path. The coming weeks would tell me whether Sarah's commitment was real or just another fleeting moment of desperation. The weeks following my conversation with Sarah were filled with a delicate balance of hope and skepticism. I had decided to give her a chance, but every day felt like a test of my emotional resilience. I was cautiously navigating this newfound territory of our relationship, trying to pick up the pieces while simultaneously guarding my heart against further pain. Sarah had cut ties with Marco, as she promised. She deleted her social media accounts, removed his number from her phone, and stopped attending the cooking classes that had become a painful reminder of her betrayal. I saw her making an effort, and part of me wanted to believe that our marriage could be salvaged. However, it didn't take long for the old feelings of doubt to creep back in. I would find myself replaying moments in my head when she had lied to me or when I had felt the distance between us. Those memories nagged at me, whispering that I might be a fool for trusting her again. One evening, she suggested we start couples counseling. I hadn't considered it before, but the idea intrigued me. Maybe having a neutral third party could help us navigate the complexities of our situation. I reluctantly agreed, feeling that it might provide us both with the tools we needed to heal and communicate effectively. The first session was awkward. We sat side by side in the therapist's office, the air thick with unspoken words. The therapist, a woman named Dr. Miller, was kind and professional, but every question felt like a spotlight shining on our wounds. "How do you both feel about the current state of your relationship?" she asked, her gaze shifting between us. "I'm trying to forgive and rebuild," I said, my voice steady but laced with hesitation. "But it's hard to forget what happened." "I'm committed to making things right," Sarah chimed in, her eyes earnest. "I know I messed up, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to show Jake that I can be trusted again." Dr. Miller nodded, prompting us to delve deeper into the issues that had led to Sarah's infidelity. As we talked, I felt a mix of vulnerability and strength. It was painful to unearth our past, but there was something cathartic about sharing our feelings openly in a safe space. Over the following weeks, we continued to attend sessions, and while the process was grueling, I began to see glimmers of progress. Sarah shared her feelings of loneliness and the pressures she had felt as a stay-at-home mom, and I opened up about my own struggles balancing work and our relationship. We were learning to communicate again, though it was still a fragile connection. As the therapy sessions unfolded, I noticed a change in Sarah. She seemed more engaged, more present, and genuinely interested in reconnecting with me on different levels. One evening, we decided to cook together, something we hadn't done in ages. The kitchen filled with laughter as we tried to recreate an old recipe, and for the first time in a long time I felt a spark of joy. But even amidst those moments of light, the shadows of doubt lingered. I struggled with the idea of whether I could fully trust her again. One night, after a particularly fulfilling therapy session, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living on borrowed time. The following day, I had a moment of weakness. I found myself scrolling through social media, and I came across another post that made my heart race, a picture of Marco, looking as charming as ever at a local charity event. He was surrounded by people, smiling and laughing, and for a brief moment I felt the familiar rush of anger and betrayal. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I wasn't supposed to let him have this power over me anymore. He was out of Sarah's life, and I needed to focus on rebuilding my own. But seeing him stirred something deep within me, a reminder of the pain he had caused, and I felt the urge to confront him again. Instead, I chose to communicate my feelings with Sarah. "I need to talk," I said one evening after dinner. "Can we sit down for a moment?" "Of course," she replied, concern etching her face. As we sat in the living room, I felt the weight of my words pressing down on me. "I saw a post of Marco today," I said, my voice steady but trembling inside. "It made me feel insecure. I thought we were moving forward, but seeing him still affects me." She nodded, her expression softening. "I understand. I'm sorry it's still haunting you. I want to assure you that I'm devoted to us, to making this work. I know you say that, but seeing him reminds me of everything that went wrong. I'm trying to forgive, but it's hard," I admitted, the vulnerability spilling out. "I'm scared that I'll never fully trust you again." "Trust is something we need to rebuild together," she said, her voice sincere. "It might take time, but I'm here for you, Jake. I want to see you happy again, and I want to be part of that happiness." As I looked into her eyes, I saw sincerity, a glimpse of the woman I had fallen in love with years ago. But I also saw the weight of her mistakes, the burden of guilt she carried. "I appreciate that, but it's tough," I replied, my heart aching. "I need to know that I can depend on you moving forward, that you won't let someone like Marco come between us again." "I promise, Jake. No more distractions. It's just you and me now," she vowed, reaching out to grasp my hand. In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps there was a path forward for us. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be bumps along the way, but if we both committed, maybe we could navigate through this storm together. Days turned into weeks, and while the road to recovery was paved with obstacles, we began to rediscover each other. We laughed, shared stories, and even took time to go on small dates, reigniting the connection that had been buried beneath the weight of betrayal. Yet, I still found myself grappling with the underlying fear of another betrayal, and I was vigilant, determined to safeguard my heart. I spoke with friends who had gone through similar experiences, absorbing their advice and using it as a guide to navigate my way. Then came a pivotal moment. One evening, Sarah and I were going through some old photos, reminiscing about our early days together, when I stumbled upon a picture of our wedding day. I felt a swell of emotions, love, nostalgia, and painful memories of how we had strayed from that blissful day. "Do you remember how happy we were?" I asked, my voice tinged with longing. "Of course," she replied, her eyes misting over. "I want to get back to that happiness, Jake. I want to make you laugh like I used to. Share our dreams and build our future together." We sat in silence for a moment, and I realized that while the past couldn't be changed, there was still a chance for our future. We could work toward healing together if we both genuinely wanted it. "You know, I might never fully forget what happened, but I'm willing to try," I said finally, my heart opening up again. "Thank you, Jake," she said, her gratitude evident in her voice. As the weeks turned into months, we continued to attend counseling, and while the journey was still fraught with challenges, I began to feel a sense of renewal. I was learning to trust Sarah again, one small step at a time. Each moment of vulnerability, each heart-to-heart conversation, was a building block to a stronger foundation. We weren't perfect, but we were learning to navigate our way back to each other, and it felt like a victory, no matter how small. I realized that love wasn't just about the grand gestures. It was about the willingness to face hard truths, to communicate openly, and to commit to rebuilding what had been lost. I was cautiously optimistic, ready to embrace the journey ahead, one filled with love, healing, and the possibility of a second chance. As I settled back into the rhythm of life with Sarah, I couldn't help but reflect on the resilience we both had shown. The journey to rebuild our marriage hadn't been easy, and it required immense patience and commitment from both of us. But as time passed, I found myself slowly letting go of the bitterness that had clouded my heart. Counseling sessions became a safe space where we could express our feelings, fears, and hopes for the future. With each discussion, I watched Sarah grow more accountable, more aware of her actions. One day, she surprised me with a heartfelt letter. In it, she wrote about her regrets, her commitment to me, and her desire to be a better partner. As I read those words, I felt a warmth spread through my chest. Yes, there were still moments of doubt, but I was beginning to believe that our love was worth fighting for. I realized that healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means understanding and learning. I was learning how to trust again, and in turn, I was giving Sarah the chance to prove herself. 1. Evening we celebrated our anniversary. Just a quiet dinner at home, but it felt monumental. We cooked together, just like we used to before everything had gone wrong. I found joy in our teamwork, laughter spilling across the kitchen as we fumbled with ingredients and shared inside jokes. As I watched her smile, I was reminded of why I fell in love with her in the first place. "Jake, I want you to know how much you mean to me," she said as we sat down to eat. "These past months have shown me just how much I've taken for granted. I want to do better for you, for us." I looked into her eyes, and for the first time in a long time I felt a genuine sense of hope. "I appreciate that, Sarah. I've seen you work hard to change, and it gives me hope for our future." As we raised our glasses in a toast, I felt a sense of gratitude wash over me. We had fought hard to get to this point, and while the scars of betrayal would always remain, they were a part of our story, one that had transformed us. But it wasn't just about surviving the rough patches. It was about thriving in the aftermath. We began to explore new adventures together, taking weekend trips to neighboring towns, cooking classes where we could learn together, but this time without Marco, and rekindling the passion that had once defined our relationship. We also made it a point to check in with each other regularly, ensuring that we were both heard and understood. I learned to voice my concerns, and she learned to be more open about her feelings. The more we communicated, the stronger our bond became. The healing wasn't linear. We still had moments of doubt and insecurity, but we faced them together, hand in hand. I learned that relationships take work, but they also require grace. Grace to forgive, grace to grow, and grace to allow each other room to breathe. Months passed, and as spring turned into summer, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. I no longer felt like a victim of Sarah's choices. Instead, I felt empowered by our journey. My heart had learned to trust again, and it was a liberating feeling. One afternoon, as we were sitting in our backyard, enjoying the sunshine, I turned to her and said, "You know, I've been thinking about how far we've come. I couldn't have imagined this a year ago." She smiled, her eyes shimmering with warmth. "Neither could I, but I'm so grateful we didn't give up on each other. We've built something beautiful from the ashes." And that's when it hit me. This journey had taught me so much about love, forgiveness, and resilience. I realized that every relationship encounters storms, but it's how you choose to weather those storms that defines your path forward. I learned to set boundaries, to express my feelings, and to communicate my needs. I also learned the value of vulnerability, allowing myself to be open to love again, despite the fear of getting hurt. As we sat there, side by side, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Our love story was still being written, and while it wouldn't always be easy, I was ready to embrace whatever came next. In the end, I learned that love is not just about the good times. It's about weathering the storm together, growing stronger in the aftermath, and choosing to believe in one another. We were no longer defined by the betrayal. We were defined by our commitment to healing and building a future together. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I felt equipped to face them with Sarah by my side. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited about what the future held for us. I had learned to trust again, and in that trust, I found hope.